Hello everyone, this is part 31 of What If Naruto Was Trained by Anko, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The following morning, Anko and Naruto walked towards the training grounds, amazed at how many people they saw along the way. Apparently the party had lasted until the early hours and they saw more than a few people sleeping of their hangovers on the side of the road, or in one case in the middle of the road. They even saw a young couple snoring half-en in a small alley, too drunk to finish what they started. This had Anko laughing loudly. Naruto, on the other hand, was amazed at how some of the grown-ups in the village acted. Luckily they hadn't encountered anyone they knew so far, and he hoped it would stay that way. Leaving the business district, they met up with Kurenai, who as always was waiting for them, and together they continued their walk towards the grounds. Seriously, some people need to learn some restraint, Kurenai said before sighing. I had to yell 3 times before those party animals next door would shut up. I even considered using some of my cruel genjutsu on them so they would be quiet. Now Kurenai, you can't blame them. After all, everyone was happy that someone like Tsunade is the new Hokage. Anko said. While I understand their feelings about our new Hokage, that's no reason to keep other people awake with drunken singing and yelling in the middle of the night. Kurenai said. It was clear to both Anko and Naruto that she hadn't slept very well and probably would be in a bad mood for the rest of the day. Just then, both Hinata and Kiba joined their little group, and both of them looked well rested and eager to start training. So far everyone had been very enthusiastic with their new training schedule. Kiba immediately engaged Naruto in a conversation about the new jutsu he was learning from his sister. According to him, it was quite impressive and would be his strongest jutsu so far, but when Naruto asked what kind of jutsu, Kiba refused to tell him, saying that this was payback for all those times Naruto refused to say anything. Ha! Now you know what it feels like to be left in the dark, Anko said to Naruto before grinning at him. Naruto just grinned back before sticking his tongue out at her. Careful, Naruto-kun, you might trip and bite it off by accident, and we wouldn't want that, would we? That tongue is way too talented to lose, Anko said while winking at him. Of course the hidden message wasn't lost on Naruto, and he turned bright red, much to Anko's delight. He wasn't the only one who blushed though. Hinata was doing a very nice impression of a red pepper or tomato as well. Kiba just laughed loudly before he congratulated Naruto. Kurenai groaned at Anko's remark but said nothing, knowing that it wouldn't help anyway. Arriving at the ground, they saw that the rest of the gang was already there, and the genin were busy doing some warming up exercises so they wouldn't pull a muscle when guys' training started. The genin was starting to get used to his training regiment, and since they all did it together, it was fun as well. That they had to endure Guy's speeches about youthfulness was a minor inconvenience, and by now they had learned to ignore him. The kids went off to their little corner to get ready while the Junin senseis discussed the program of the day. When they saw that the teams were ready, they went over to them and explained what they would be doing today. Alright, like usual, we'll start with strength, stamina and speed training with Guy, Kakashi said as he was the unofficial leader of the Junin, seeing he was the most experienced. Then we'll divide into 2 groups, one for ninjutsu training and one for genjutsu. Basically like always, Anko chipped in, grinning. Yes Anko, like always. Well, what are you waiting for? Get moving, Kakashi said sternly, though they could hear the amusement in his voice. Yosh! Follow me, my youthfull students. We'll start with 20 laps around the grounds, Guy yelled loudly before flashing one of his trademark smiles, showing his perfect white teeth. When Guy's part was over, most of the genin were exhausted. He had them doing laps, squats, push-ups, sit-ups before they started on punching and kicking the training logs until they couldn't lift their arms. Kurenai for her part groaned, as well as she knew that her half of the genin would be too tired to really pay attention to what she was saying. Therefore, she proposed a small break so they could rest a little. They eagerly accepted, and they fell down on the soft grass so they could catch their breath. The girls sat together discussing girl business while the guys just followed Shikamaru's example and closed their eyes to take a little nap. One blonde chunin however made his way over to Kakashi and started talking about jutsu and shinobi tactics. Ino, Sakura, Hinata and Tenten were busy talking and laughing about things when the subject, boys, came up. Like most teenagers their age they had started to get really interested in the opposite S. They had gotten rid of the childish crushes and though none of them was ready to start a serious relationship yet, it couldn't hurt talking about it. Sakura, Ino and Hinata had been friends for a while and when Team Guy started training with them, Tenten was quickly accepted as another friend. So Tenten, do you have someone you like? Sakura asked her friend. Not really. I admit that Neji is attractive and he has changed a lot since Hinata here cleaned his clock in the finals, this make Hinata smile and blush a little. I don't think that he's interested in me. But that's fine, I'm too busy focusing on becoming a kunoichi right now. Tenten shrugged. What about you, Hinata? Ino asked quickly before she was asked the same question. Well, before I always liked Naruto-kun but I now realize that we wouldn't have worked out. She said a little sad. Naruto-kun is someone who needs a strong woman at his side and while I'm not the shy person I used to be I don't think I can be as strong as Anko-sensei is. She said while looking at Naruto. Do you still like him? Tenten asked softly. Not really. I think of Naruto-kun as someone who's capable of inspiring me. I don't like him in a romantic way anymore but he's still one of my most precious people. He's the one who forced me to change and for that I'll be eternally grateful to him. Hinata said with a smile. The four girls then looked at Naruto, who had taken off his jacket leaving him in his sleeveless shirt showing his muscled arms and chest. Naruto wasn't built like a bodybuilder but more like an athlete or a swimmer having a toned body from exercising. He's so different from what he used to be in the academy. I'll never forget those orange monstrosities he called clothes. Ino said chuckling. He has become quite the catch hasn't he? True, he's not the same boy anymore. He's strong, friendly and handsome. Not to mention he's the Yondaim's son to boot. Tenten whispered. Yeah, if he wasn't taken I wouldn't mind being with him. Ino said with a blush on her face. Ino, don't bother thinking about that. Naruto-kun and Anko-sensei are made for each other. They understand each other so well that neither of them would ever think of falling in love for someone else. I wouldn't say they're perfect for each other but I think they're close. Hinata said confidently. Ino nodded before they started comparing the rest of the boy against each other while laughing loudly. Anko and Kurenai were sitting a bit further but they had heard most of the discussion. They chose not to get involved as they wanted the girls to get to know each other. And what better way to achieve that than by gossiping about their friends? Anko wasn't worried about the girls liking Naruto as she knew that Naruto would never leave her but that didn't mean she couldn't tease or embarrass them a bit about it. She winked at Kurenai and got up to join the girls' discussion. Kurenai just chuckled at her friend knowing that Anko couldn't help but like to tease people. Alright girls, are you ready to continue the training? Anko said clapping in her hand to get the girls' attention. Or do you want to keep leering at the boys? This was enough to make the four of them blush like crazy knowing that they were caught. Anko laughed loudly before sitting down next to them. She then proceeded to tell them that there was nothing wrong with being interested in boys and that it was only natural at their age. Kurenai joined them as well and soon the six of them were talking about the facts of life. Kurenai and Anko had taken upon themselves to ensure that the girls understood that while it was okay to like boys, it wasn't okay to neglect their training since as kunoichi the shinobi world was extremely dangerous. When Sakura asked what they meant Kurenai explained that enemy shinobi wouldn't hesitate to use them for their own personal pleasure if they got caught. It was a harsh comment and she saw that the girls were a bit shocked by the revelation. Does that happen a lot, Kurenai-sensei? Sakura asked a bit afraid. It happens more than I would like to admit Sakura. But rest assured that Konoha doesn't participate in that kind of behavior. Kurenai said trying to reassure them. Konoha forbids such treatment of kunoichi and to do so would result in being arrested and stripped of your shinobi status. However, Anko interrupted. That doesn't mean other shinobi won't use such underhand tactics. Therefore it is imperative that you girls get strong enough to deal with such SC bags. The girls looked at each other and nodded, each vowing to get strong and protect the others from ever having to deal with such an experience. Anko and Kurenai were happy to see that the girls seemed to understand what it meant to be a kunoichi. More than once had they seen women abused by men, and suffice it to say that those men didn't live to see another day when they were through with them. Seeing that break time was almost over, they told the girl to get ready and joined the other Junin sensei. Guy was asking Kakashi for another challenge but was ignored by the Sharingan wielder shinobi in favor for his book. Guy complained loudly before he seemed to remember something important. He looked at the position of the sun and saw that it was close to being 8 a.m. When the rest of the sensei saw Guy's behavior, they asked him what was wrong. Tsunade-sama told me last night that she wants to examine Lee's condition today so she could start on treating him as soon as possible. I promised Lee that I would accompany him. Guy said. The rest of the genin who had heard Guy told him to tell Lee that they were all behind him and that they were waiting for him to join them as soon as possible. This of course made Guy yelled out about the youthfulness and the power of youth before he bid his goodbye. In his home, Lee was waiting for his role model who had promised to join him for the examination. Truthfully, Lee was terrified to hear the results from Tsunade. While she had said that she would be capable of curing him, he was still worried. His back and legs were still hurting if he made too sudden movements. Gaara truly had inflicted some serious damage to his body. More than once Lee thought back about his fight with the Sunanin, thinking about how he had fought with all his strength and how he still had lost. To Lee, taijutsu was everything, as he was incapable of using ninjutsu or genjutsu thanks to his condition. For years, people told him that becoming a shinobi with only taijutsu was impossible and that it was better for him to quit. It was only when he met Guy Sensei that he found someone that believed in him. When he started training with his team, Lee quickly saw that Guy Sensei was an amazing shinobi capable of defeating everyone with his taijutsu, so naturally he was very excited when he got to learn his sensei's taijutsu style. Day after day, he trained as hard as he could, he pushed himself beyond his limits, and it had paid off nicely. His taijutsu was without a doubt the best of all his peers. When he saw Naruto fight his adversary during the preliminaries by using an unknown taijutsu style, he was amazed to hear that Naruto had somewhat created his own style by mixing two other styles into one. His respect for the blonde shinobi went up several notches, and he could see that Naruto was proficient with his own style. Although he knew that he could beat Naruto in taijutsu, it was nothing but amazing to watch him fight. By the time his own fight was finally decided, Lee had been so pumped up that he almost jumped up and down in place. He was eager to show everyone that he too could be a powerful shinobi by just using taijutsu. He wanted to prove to them and to himself that he could make it, and more than anything he wanted to make his sensei proud. When he woke up after the fight, he was so disillusioned and disappointed in himself until Guy had told him how proud he was of his student. This was one of the happiest moments in Lee's life, but it all came crashing down on him when he heard how much damage his body had taken and that his career as shinobi was most likely over. When Naruto had brought back Tsunade, who according to Guy Sensei, could cure any wound or injury, Lee had been ecstatic. Once more, he regained hope that he could continue his dream, and when she examined him she had told him that at first glance she would be able to cure him, but that it would take a lot of effort and time. She made him promise that he would take it easy for the next few days and that then she would do an in-depth examination. Today she would determine if she could cure him, and it scared the hell out of him. Lee, my youthful pupil, it is time to check up on the youthfulness of your youthful body. Guy's voice boomed from outside. Lee smiled and grabbed his crutches and slowly made his way outside. Good morning, Guy Sensei, Lee said respectfully. Guy nodded and helped his young student along the way to the hospital where Tsunade would give him his checkup. On the way, Guy transmitted the genin's message, and he smiled when Lee seemed to cheer up knowing that his friends were rooting for him. It made him smile a little, and he vowed to rejoin them as soon as possible. When they reached the hospital, Guy inquired if Tsunade was already there, and the lady at the reception told him that she was waiting in examination room 9. He thanked her of her youthful answer, confusing her to no end. Let's go, Lee, Guy said in a much quieter voice than usual. He had long ago learned that shouting in the hospital was frowned upon, so he tried to restrain himself. After knocking on the door, they went inside and saw both Tsunade and Shizune waiting for them. After greeting both women and once again thanking them for all the trouble, Lee stepped forward and sat down on the chair in front of Tsunade. When she asked him, he pulled off his shirt, allowing her to use her medical jutsu to examine the injuries his back had suffered. While Tsunade was doing that, Shizune was asking questions to Lee, not only to distract him a little but also to find out if he had any other pains or problems. Tsunade had finished with checking his back, so now they were looking at his leg, which had suffered some damage as well from Gaara's attack. When she was done, she told Lee to get dressed again and to follow her into a private office. Alright kid, sit down and I'll explain what I've found, Tsunade said while she sat down as well. Guy, you sit down as well and don't interrupt me until I'm done. Tsunade-sama, do you have any further need of me? Shizune asked. No Shizune, you can continue your regular duties, Tsunade said, shaking her head. Now, first let me tell you that your injuries are considerable. Let us start with your leg first. While the injury in your leg is serious, I will have no problem curing it. It will take some time before you'll have your mobility back, but with careful training your leg will be fine. Lee was feeling very happy that Tsunade would be able to help him recover. However, the problem is your back. I'll be perfectly honest with you Lee, that injury is most likely beyond my capabilities, Tsunade said softly. She hated this part of being a medic nin. Bringing such devastating news to one so young was something she would never get used to. She saw Lee's face change from happy to miserable. Tsunade-sama, surely there must be a way to cure Lee. Guy was horrified. Let me explain why this injury is so serious. Lee, your spine has suffered a tremendous blow and some bone fragments have nestled them very closely to your nerve center. While I possibly could remove those fragments, there's a pretty big chance the nerves in your spine will get severed. Tsunade tried to show both Lee and Guy by using a picture of Lee's injury. Tsunade-sama, what would happen if those nerves get severed? Lee asked, although he could guess the answer. You could be paralyzed at the least or at the worst, Tsunade said softly. What is my survival rate? Lee asked again. I would have to say that the chance of success is about 50-50. Tsunade answered, looking straight at the genin. She could see the determination in his eyes and sighed. She wondered what this generation was all about. First Naruto, who managed to convince her to become Hokage, and now this kid, who would take a serious risk just to continue being a shinobi. Then I humbly request that you perform this operation, Lee said, falling on his knees. Why? Why are you risking your life? You could become anything you want and live a long time even with this injury. In time it will heal and you wouldn't hurt at all, Tsunade asked Lee. Because becoming a shinobi is my dream. I want to prove that I can be a great shinobi by just using taijutsu. If I'm not willing to risk my life for my dream, then I'm not worthy of living, Lee said passionately. Well said Lee. Tsunade-sama, please help my student, Guy exclaimed, kneeling before her next to his favorite student. Please don't shout inside the hospital, Tsunade sighed. Very well Lee, if you're willing to put your life on the line for your dream, then I'm willing to take the risk as well, Tsunade said, smiling. Thank you Tsunade-sama, Lee said while tears ran down his cheeks. We'll do some extra tests and then we'll decide when to operate on you. Is that okay? She said. Hi Tsunade-sama, Lee nodded. Good. Now I want you to take it easy for the next few days. This means no training whatsoever, is that understood? She said sternly, getting a nod from Lee and Guy. Meet me here tomorrow at 9 and then we'll get started. At the training grounds, Naruto was practicing with his sword, as this was one of the areas he wanted to improve on. Granted, he had some devastating techniques, but his overall knowledge of kenjutsu wasn't that great. It wasn't that he wanted to become a kenjutsu master, but he wanted to reach a certain level of competence with using his sword. Tenten, who was watching as Naruto unsheathed his sword, was practically drooling at how his sword was stored in a 10-inch sheath. She had seen him use his sword at the Chunin exams against Gaara and she had been very impressed with it. She remembered that she wanted to ask where he had gotten such a beautiful sword, but with the invasion and everything that happened afterwards, she didn't have the time yet. When she saw him move through what she believed to be katas he made on his own, she saw that he was fairly talented. She slowly approached him while unsealing her own katana from the large scroll she always carried around. Hey Naruto, do you mind if I join you? Tenten asked, making Naruto stop for a second to look at her. Tenten-chan, you use a sword as well? Naruto asked, a bit surprised. He had seen her fight at the preliminaries and guessed that she used long-range attacks, judging by how she primarily used kunai and shuriken. Well, I do aim to be a weapons mistress, so I kind of need to be able to handle a lot of weapons. She answered with a smile. Naruto nodded and went over to talk to her a bit. It's just that I've never seen you using a sword before, so I assumed you were focusing on long-ranged attacks, he said while looking at the katana in her hands. I'll show you mine if you show me yours, Tenten said, wanting to tease him a little. She almost laughed out loud when he handed her his sword, blushing like crazy. When she inspected Naruto's sword, she was amazed at how good it felt in her hands. It was perfectly balanced and the edge of the blade looked like it could cut through anything. It wasn't decorated with a design on the hilt, but it was magnificent in its simplicity. She did notice some carvings on the blade itself and she wondered what their meanings were. She would have to ask him later on. She handed his sword back and he sheathed it, seeing she had some questions about it. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.